Thank you. You may be seated. Burt Wagner felt like he was paralyzed. A sensation started in the back of his neck and then started working on down through his whole torso. It wasn't really what was happening, but it was what he was feeling. Burt had worked at General Motors in Flint, Michigan for 22 years. And now his twerpy new boss for the past 18 months was telling him they were closing that plant. 22 years gone, no job, life changes. And then there was Sydney. Sydney came home, arms full of groceries, threw open the back door, crashed into the kitchen, and there she found Ted's letter sitting on the kitchen table. After 18 years, 3 children, he was leaving, going off to find himself. Life changes. In fact, it never stops changing. Last week, we began this particular series of messages by establishing a faith-centered philosophy of change. Today, we move forward by considering 2 items, 2 elements that are always with us, regardless how much change might swirl around us. And what are those 2 items? Well, we get a hint from David in Psalm 139, Francie. He says, "O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest when I sit down and when I rise up. Thou discernest my thoughts from afar. Thou searchest out my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou dost beset me behind and before, and layest thy hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's high. I cannot attain it. Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I make my bed in Sheol, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there thy hand shall lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. If I say, let only darkness cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to thee. The night is as bright as day, for darkness is as light with thee." Somehow, this courageous young sheep herder who would one day rule Israel managed to get his arms around the 2 ingredients that are always there no matter what kind of change is thrown at you. Change just keeps coming. It never stops. But these 2 things abide. No matter what happens to us, when the smoke clears, these 2 elements are still there. Martin Buber, the Jewish theologian, identified them as the I, as in I, meaning the person on one side, and the thou, which is God, on the other. One of the most unforgettable speeches I ever heard was delivered by a pediatrician by the name of Nord. I don't remember his first name, but I'll never forget what he had to say. I heard it when I was a high school sophomore. It was Student Recognition Day at the local Optimists Club, and I was there as a guest. Dr. Nord was the featured speaker. He was a bony-looking character with a hooked nose and giant hands. I remember being impressed by how far down the side of the podium his hands reached. Then I heard what he started to say. And once he started talking, I was no longer concerned about either his nose or his hands. Dr. Nord was talking about surviving the Bataan Death March. He described how it felt to stumble through the scorching midday sun with cracked lips and aching legs, unsure he had the energy to take another step. He told of watching fellow prisoners executed because they were too weak to keep walking. And described how some of the men just lost it. They went berserk, out of their minds, screaming, dashing off into the jungle only to be mowed down by a hail of Japanese bullets. When he finished talking, the room was stone silent. And then a voice came from the back of the room. I couldn't see who it was. But the question was, how did you survive? How did you get out when all the others perished? Nord leaned forward to the microphone and he whispered, faith. Faith. It made all the difference. And then he quoted a couple lines from an old hymn. I remembered one line of it this week, but I couldn't remember the rest. So I did what everybody does when you can't remember the rest. You Google it. I got the rest. Francie? My God and I will go for aye together. We'll walk and talk and jest as good friends do. This earth will pass, and with it common trifles. But God and I will go unendingly. When change occurs, whether it's by chance or by choice, there are two constants snuggled in every human being through which life must be managed. And those two are the self and God. In light of this, when challenged by change, how does the healthy believer respond? Well, we start by claiming that I. Now, in order to understand this, you have to draw a line between the I and the me. Few people better understood this than the Jesuit priest Tony DeMello. He maintained that the me is the public self, and the I is the private self. He said the me is all caught up with images and titles, whereas the I is the atypical core that makes every one of us, a unique and unrepeatable miracle of God. Unfortunately, most of us are a lot more concerned about the me than we are the I. We tend to believe our value is determined by what other people think of us and what we've managed to achieve in the race for success. Hence, when asked to identify ourselves, we almost always talk in me terms. We say, I'm Barry Johnson, Senior Minister of Jupiter First Church. Or I'm Fred Schmuck, CEO of Whirligig. Or worse yet, we identify ourselves according to others. We say, I'm Susan Schmuck. My husband is Fred Schmuck, the CEO of Whirligig. Now, all of this is a subliminal way of denying our authenticity as children of God. I am not my title. I am not my job. I am not my education. And I am not my religion. I am a one and only child of God. And so are you. Thus, claiming the I is often a matter of discarding labels. I love the story about the two 6-year-old kids riding in a school bus, going right down the main street of their town. They go by this big old Gothic church. Boy turns to the girl. He says, "Are you a Presbyterian?" "Nope," she says, "we belong to another abomination." Out of the mouths of babes. You see, the real issue when we start talking about change and the self is how the person must take predominance over the predicament. Think about this. You are greater than anything that can happen to you. I think of the guy who was strolling through the streets of Belfast when all of a sudden he feels the cold steel of a pistol barrel against the back of his head, and he halts and waits, trembling. And from behind comes the question, "Are you Catholic or Protestant?" Now, brilliantly, this guy responded, "I'm Jewish." And the voice comes back, "I have got to be the luckiest Palestinian in all of Belfast." Labels just don't cut it. My sense of self, your sense of self, has to be greater than any title we bear, whether that title be senior minister or author or husband or father, or for me, son of a sign painter. I'm bigger than any one of those roles. And if any or all of them are suddenly taken from me, Barry Johnson must be free to keep right on living as the unique and unrepeatable miracle of God that he is. My security must center in a one-to-one relationship to my Creator. Think about it. That's the only relationship you'll ever form that will endure everything that can happen to you. Truth be told, we are cumulative creatures, and we're constantly changing. We never stop changing. Our world never stops changing. Standing in front of you this morning is a boy who twice battled rheumatic fever, a teenager who drove his father's brand new Oldsmobile 98 into the middle of a river, a college student who never did buy into the legalism of his place of study, a minister who has always believed the best. I believe it this morning. The best is yet to come. And a man who is a great deal more introverted than many people believe or understand. Now, I'm not one of those people I just described. I'm all of them. And no matter how many changes crash into my life, I will endure. Because I am more than any event or any title or any description that somebody may arbitrarily throw my way. I think of the two guys who were on an elevator at the Hancock Building in Chicago back during the 2012 presidential election. One guy said to the other, "Are you voting Democratic or Republican?" "Democratic, of course," came the answer. The other guy said, "Why is that?" He says, "Because my father voted Democratic, and his father before him, and his father before him." Now the other guy's bewildered. He says, "That's ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense at all. Suppose your father had been a horse thief, and his father before him, and his father before him. Then what would you be?" And the other guy said, "Then I would be a Republican." You see, Bigotry thrives in the world of preconceived notions. So the first step in coping with change is to claim your I, your you. You're the only you. You are a unique and unrepeatable miracle of God, and no change is going to change that. The second step is to place our confidence in the God who rules over all. Now, what's that mean when we say God rules over all? It means that you and me, trusting God rules over all, we can trust the moment we have. No matter what it brings us, we can trust that moment because God is still God and knows exactly what we're going through. You imagine the boy David on the occasion when he wrote this phenomenal psalm. I can tell you from experience many times that the nights in Israel are particularly ominous. The sky gets this layered blackness about it, and a thick fog has a way of just blanketing everything within a matter of minutes. Now imagine a young man left in the hills to watch over his sheep. Couple that with the boulder-blotched terrain where it's believed David served as a shepherd, and the plot really thickens. It gets dark. The fog falls. He can't discern what those things out there. Some of them are boulders, but they might be anything. Who knows what's there? Lions, jackals, thieves, murderers, could be anyone. It was all possible. In short, sheep herding, we make it romantic. Not so much. It was a tough job. So what did David sing sitting out there in the darkness, Francie? He sang, "Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend to heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in Sheol, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there thy hand shall lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. If I say, let only darkness cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to thee. The night is as bright as day, for darkness is as light with thee. For darkness is as light with thee." You fear change? You fear what's coming? You want everything to stay the same yesterday and today and forever? No. You trust God, and you let him lead you into whatever future he has prepared. In his classic book, Man's Need and God's Action, Rule Howe suggests that all human beings are on a search, every one of us. We're looking for answers to life's predicaments. But, says Howe, as we keep bumping into change after change after change, it soon becomes clear that it's beyond us. It is beyond us to fully understand all the dimensions of life. And at that point, our needs become singular. We only have one need that dominates all the others. Francie? Howe writes, "When we begin searching, we find that there are many answers. Some of our wants are immediate and superficial. Some are deeper. But the deepest need," hang on to this one, "but the deepest need of all is the desire to be at one with someone, to have someone who can be at one with us, and through whom we can find at oneness with all." That one. And so in the final analysis, we're all like that shepherd boy David, sitting in the middle of our various life journeys, wondering who's walking with us. And when change strikes and our expectations are suddenly interrupted, it's just like that heavy Judean fog silently reinforcing our darkness, underlining our questions, magnifying our confusion, and forcing us to wonder, how am I going to handle this? What do I do next? How do I survive? What would I do on a jungle trail in the Bataan Death March? How would I get through? To whom do I turn for guidance? And that's exactly what's going on with millions of people all over America this morning. We don't know exactly what's coming for our nation. For that matter, we don't know exactly what's coming for our church. And we feel anxious and unsettled. It's the uncertainty that drives us nuts. There's no better time than for us to recall right now that phrase that David gave us, Francie. Darkness. Darkness is as light with thee. May you leave this place this morning with those fears deeply compromised. May you leave this place this morning with an awareness that you are a unique and unrepeatable miracle of God. May you leave this place this morning confident. You're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. Life's going to be fine. Because it's all in the Master's hands. So I want you to take a little trip with me. I want you to go to a little farmhouse outside the city or the town of Muncie, Indiana. We walk up to the house, you and me, and we get to the kitchen window. When we look into the kitchen, we see two people inside. One is an older woman with a very kind face, wearing a cotton dress and wire-rimmed spectacles. The other is a little tassel-haired girl, maybe 6, 7 years old. The little one is on her knees on a kitchen chair, watching Grandma roll out a pie crust on the kitchen table. Nana, she says, do you think there's a God? Uh-huh. Have you ever seen God? Nope. Then how do you know? After. That's how I know, says Grandma. I see God after. After things happen, then I look back and I can see what God was doing. Now the little kid looks confused. So Grandma says, Sally, get me a bowl of water. So the kid does as directed, goes over, gets a bowl, fills it a little bit of water, brings it back over, sets it in front of Grandma. At that point, Nana picks up the salt shaker, takes the lid off of it, pours the salt into the bowl of water, takes a spoon, begins to stir it for a little while, finishes stirring and says to the little girl, where's the salt? Kid says, in the water. Well, how do you know? Can you see it? Nope. Well, honey, God works the same way. We can't see God all the time, but he's there just like the salt in the water. Now, says Grandma, come with me. And they go out the door, out into the yard, big, wonderful spread of grass there. And Grandma takes that bowl and pours the salty water onto the grass. 24 hours later, we find the same two back in the same spot. Grandma says, can you see where we poured the water? Yeah, says the little girl, right there on that white spot. Aha, says Nana. It's the same with God. We can't always see what the Creator is doing with us, but if we make it a point to keep our faith, we can usually look back and see God's hand was working the whole time. That is certainly the case for all of us this morning. As we look back on 25 years of the ministry of David Kaiser Cross, it's been a fabulous journey, marked by indelible memories. I recall, David, our first Christmas together here, our first Christmas Eve. And we sat in a little office over in the old building and said, you know, what we got to have is Candelaria. You know, people coming from the north know I don't see so many Candelaria down here. All right, well, let's make them. We'll get them. Well, how are we going to get them? Well, we'll ask the congregation to help us. So we asked the congregation. We said, bring in your plastic, gallon jug jobbies. Bring them on in, because we're going to make Candelaria. Well, the people of this church responded like they always do. In abundance, we got milk cartons. We got so many of these things, they filled one of the little rooms over there, a little classroom, jam full. What we weren't ready for was that not all of these beloved, wonderful Christians rinsed out those jugs before they brought them in. Now, we left them sitting in that classroom for about a week. And then we opened one and got out of that room as fast as we could. It was an awful experience. David's nodding his head. I know. He was right there. There was also that unforgettable night. And several of you in here were there for this. It unfolded at 3 o'clock in the morning, when with the help of FP&L, driving in front of our action, all the way from Jupiter Hospital to right over here where the little trailers used to be. They weren't here. They belonged to the hospital, but the hospital was going to get rid of them. And David happened to go in there and found that out, came straight to me. I was in the hospital recovering from prostate surgery. David came in and said, man, we can get those buildings that they're using over there for nothing if we just pay to move them over here. Well, at 3 o'clock in the morning, FP&L would lift the wires and they'd pull the trailers all still hooked together over here until they stayed for 10 plus years as our administration building that played a key part in where you're sitting right now. But for me, the most memorable moments with David Kaiser Cross had a lot more to do with his personality and style. Hundreds of people joined him on the journey through disciple classes. Hundreds more have feasted on David's Bible classes and the warm, inclusive, always informative way that he taught them. Personally, I shiver to think how I would have managed without David's faithful supervision over the budgets every year. Every year for 23 years, David Kaiser Cross has put together the budget for Jupiter First Church. But perhaps the most telltale display of David's character unfolded completely unaware to the vast majority of you who worship here. I'm talking about the way David dealt with the people who would come into the building off the street, looking for help, often desperately looking for help. And for the way David treated them, you would have thought they were governors or senators or kings. Time after time, he would affirm their dignity, always. Do his best to honor their requests and to leave little doubt by the time they parted that David was an example of the Lord's observation. As you have done it unto one of the least of these, you have done it unto me. David, you have been an ambassador of goodwill for Jesus Christ and for Jupiter First Church for a long, long time. So, from the pitcher's mound of the church softball team to the hurricane-ravaged backwoods of Louisiana, to countless Emmaus gatherings out at Dunklin, to 25 years of confirmation classes, to scores of non-member post-worship baptisms, to literally hundreds of staff meetings, you, my dear friend, my partner for 23 years, have clearly and firmly and gently, always gently, demonstrated your faith to everyone who crosses your path. Come on up here. I have a couple of things I want to give you here. There's a whole bunch of letters and cards and stuff that people have been writing and bringing in. They're still coming in. And then we have this gift. We wanted to give you something that would endure. And we believe this will. I wouldn't let him open it in the first service. I said you only get to open it in the second service. Let me get it out of here, Dave. There you go. Now you know why I need his help all the time. It's coming. Man, that's a trick. And you can just toss the pieces up here, you know. Beautiful. It's a gorgeous piece of work. Please remain standing. We're going to sing a song, and then we're going to walk out of here. I'll do the benediction, and David will be out there in the narthex. And I watched him after first service. He's not hugged out, but he can barely stay on his feet. Be kind, love him, tell him how much he has meant to us. This place, this building, this campus would not have been without the help of David Kaiser Cross. Let's sing.